Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to talk about a hit piece that appeared on June 29th, 2022 in science.org, written by science writer and UFO debunker and skeptic Keith Kloor. And basically the article is a hit piece against scientist Travis Taylor. Let's get into it. Basically, the headline reads, Pentagon UFO study led by researcher who believes in the supernatural. And then the subhead says, critics dumbfounded by reality TV star Travis Taylor's position as, quote, chief scientist, end quote. Okay. Now we're going to get into this article a little bit. It says, when the United States government released a much-anticipated report on UFOs a year ago, many were perplexed that it couldn't explain 143 of the 144 sightings it examined. In the single closed case, the report concluded the mystery object was a large, deflating balloon. Where are the aliens? Cracked one headline. The truth was still out there. So was any sense of who had conducted the analysis, because the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which released the study, provided no details about who had investigated the cases. Last week, however, a former Department of Defense astrophysicist and reality TV personality named Travis Taylor asserted that he was the, quote, chief scientist, end quote, for the congressionally mandated study. The revelation shocked UFO skeptics in the science community. They note that Taylor has made extraordinary claims during TV appearances, including to have seen more UFOs than I can count, and that he's been tracked by supernatural entities that caused his car and appliances to malfunction. I find it very difficult to believe federal authorities gave Taylor a prominent role in preparing the UFO report, says Seth Shostak, an astronomer at the SETI Institute, who is familiar with Taylor's involvement with Ancient Aliens, a cable TV show that promotes far-fetched UFO narratives. Now let's just talk about Seth Shostak and far-fetched UFO narratives. Basically, Seth is the grand poobah of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, okay? Really, it should be called the silly effort to investigate, like Stanton Friedman used to say, because it's basically a cult. They're not getting anywhere. They're not getting anything done. They're never going to find anything. The whole SETI is a gigantic joke, okay? It's a gigantic joke, okay? It's totally ridiculous, okay? So that's who these people go to. See, the reason Seth and SETI will always, fight back against people who are actually studying the UFOs that are here, that are obviously being operated by intelligence that are beyond what humankind has, right? The reason, because that's going to interfere with their jobs. That's why he's always against it, because that's like he views UFOs as a threat. Because what's the if they're already here, right? If they're already here, then why are we sending out radio signals into deep space? Which it's not going to work anyhow, by the way, just so you know, folks. It's a complete cult. It's a joke. SETI's a joke, okay? But anyway, let's continue here. And then it continues, says, in fact, Taylor did serve in a lead role with the government's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, UAP, task force, which produced 2021's fuzzy UFO report, Pentagon's spokesperson Susan Goff confirmed to Science Insider. But Taylor was, quote, considered the informal chief scientist, Goff says, and it was not a full-time position. Taylor did not respond to requests for comment. I wouldn't. If I was him, I wouldn't comment to you either. You're right. I'm sure he already knew in advance that it's Keith Kloor. I'm going to respond to that clown. Taylor, according to his LinkedIn profile, has 5 advanced science degrees, including a PhD in optical physics and a PhD in aerospace and engineering, and is, quote, currently working on advanced propulsion concepts, very large space telescopes, space-based beamed energy systems, and next-generation space launch concepts, end quote. He has published 2 academic textbooks and numerous peer-reviewed papers. Now, let's just stop here for a minute. See, the story what the story really should be is that a top scientist, right, is studying UFOs. Look at the degrees that this guy possesses. But because he is studying something that's not written in their science textbooks as of yet, right, because he's going outside the box to explore and try to get the answers to the mystery that's going on here, because he's doing that kind of stuff, they're going to write a hit piece about it. They're going to throw him under the bus. All right, let's continue. In recent statements to George Knapp, a TV journalist in Las Vegas, Taylor said he was asked to be the government's lead scientist on UFOs in 2019 by Jay Stratton, who he counts as a longtime DoD colleague and friend. At the time, Taylor was with the United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command, where he was employed from 2007 until retiring 2 months ago. Stratton was based at the Office of Naval Intelligence before retiring recently. Both men now work for Radiance Technologies, a Huntsville, Alabama-based defense contractor. And now again, look at that pedigree. Now this guy's no dummy, all right? I mean, that's the real story here. Is there's a top scientist, right? And he's on TV shows, right? He makes comments during Ancient Aliens, but he's also one of the people that's on the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, right? Studying all the weird phenomena that's been a lot of people have confirmed over the years. They showed some pictures. There's UFOs. There's flying saucers there. See, but again, these people sit back in their armchairs, right? They just we got to throw this guy under the bus. He's investigating stuff that we don't understand. All right, let's continue. It says, in addition to his TV work with Ancient Aliens, over the past 3 years, Taylor has starred in a show called The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. It takes place on a Utah ranch that claims to have a history of paranormal activity. Actually, no, it doesn't claim. It does have a history of paranormal activity. In fact, there's two real rich guys that ended up buying it because they knew about they heard about all the stuff that was going on, and they're trying to study it. And this is one of the people they bring in to look at it. So it's not that it claims to have a history of paranormal. It does have a history of paranormal activity. All kinds of stuff. People who have read about it. See, these guys just out of hand. They don't investigate anything. They just sit back in their armchairs and just make proclamations, right? And then try to throw people under the bus that are actually out there getting their hands dirty. All right. Taylor told Knapp poltergeist-like entities from the ranch had followed him home to Alabama and caused mechanical mayhem. Quote, my car has started and stopped itself, Taylor said. Once after his car stuttered in his driveway, Taylor said he, quote, looked up and there was an odd vortex in the clouds above my house, end quote. See, now, to these guys writing this, to the Kloors of the world, this is insane. I don't see this in any of our science books. Vortexes in the sky? Well, see, this is the problem. So, because you're not investigating it, you sit back and just make proclamations. You don't do any research, right? This guy's, again, he's out there looking into this stuff. And hey, this kind of stuff has been reported about over the decades. If you would have done some research, you would have found out that sometimes things follow you home. You go someplace and these things show up. Next thing you know, they're following you all over the place. All of a sudden, they become a part of your life. All right, let's continue. It says, Taylor's critics are simply astonished by what they call his anti-scientific embrace of the supernatural. See, they're calling it the supernatural, okay? I would say it's a scientific mystery more. That's what it sounds like to me, right? Supernatural, I mean, that sounds more like ghosts and goblins, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. There's some strange entities, apparently, that are, hanging out at Skinwalker Ranch for decades now, and they're trying to investigate it, and these things, there's some sort of intelligence there that's beyond anything we can understand. And I just say this other thing, and I have to say it again. I've seen one of these things. I've seen one of these craft up close, right, on a fishing trip in 1994. I talk about it all the time, right, and there was somebody else there. And so I know it's real. So I know people like Kloor and these other people that provide comments here. These people are going to look like fools at some point in the future, right? People are going to look back at this, and these guys are going to look like a bunch of idiots. Anyway, Taylor's critics are simply astonished by what they call his anti-scientific embrace of the supernatural and the Pentagon's willingness to work with him. I'm starting to see why the government's task force was so unsuccessful in identifying its UAPs, wrote Robert Schaefer, a UFO skeptic and author, on his blog. Of course Robert Schaefer's going to say that. He's going to sit back, he's going to pontificate from his armchair and just make statements without doing any sort of investigation because he doesn't believe in it, he doesn't want to believe it, he doesn't want to even investigate it. He just thinks it's nonsense, out of hand. And there's no point in looking into it because it's not real as far as he's concerned. But he has the audacity to make statements like this, like he knows what he's talking about. All right, the news comes amid a surge of institutional interest in UFOs. Last month, NASA said it would fund a UFO pilot study months after Congress ordered the Pentagon to stand up a UFO office and produce annual reports. Meanwhile, Avi Loeb, a well-regarded Harvard University astrophysicist, that's another thing. They don't like this guy either because, Avi Loeb, a Harvard physicist, he's going to investigate UFOs? That's preposterous, absurd. I do declare. Okay. Anyway, a well-regarded Harvard University astrophysicist has raised millions of dollars for the Galileo project, which will scan the skies for UFOs. Loeb has drawn criticism for his willingness to work with zealous UFO believers. Last month, both Loeb and Taylor appeared together at a UFO disclosure symposium in Utah, where they reviewed and discussed various UFO videos. See, I'll leave the link for this article, this piece of trash article, right? This hit piece junk. Right, but again, you see, this is what's it's still going on. Even this is kind of stuff that's was going on in the '60s. Against any kind of scientists that were looking into this, there was guys like this. They're still here. They're still here, doing nothing, doing no research whatsoever, just making statements. Don't know what they're talking about. And here's a guy, Travis Taylor, who's out there getting his hands dirty, trying to get answers for the world. Right, the guy's interested in it. He said he saw some stuff. What makes you think he didn't? What makes you think? How do you have proof that these things that he said happened didn't happen? Just because you don't believe it, you just don't think. You just think he's lying out of hand and just making statements. And I don't see how you could say that without having it. You do have any proof to back your claims up? That's what come on, Kloor. Where's your proof? Where's your proof to back this stuff up? Now, someone like Kloor and these other guys, they write good science articles, but don't want to, and they like their, that's what they like to do. But when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials, whatever, they don't like that. It's just, to them, it's just too fantastic to even think about, and so they don't even bother. That just sounds too crazy because in their minds they've been conditioned to think it's crazy. But growing up, by the way, the mainstream press has always treated this, right, and because they're in the scientific community, most scientists don't want to talk about this. They think it's all crazy. I mean, look at the way John Mack was treated back in the early '90s when he was looking into abduction. They thought he was crazy. His colleagues thought he was nuts. And still, that story, the main story that Mack is famous for investigating, of course, is the Ariel School phenomenon. And that story, still, today, almost 30 years later now, we're still talking about it. There's still no answers. All those kids are grown up now. All of them say, yes, this happened, right? But that's still not enough. Aliens, flying saucer lands, aliens show up. One of the aliens is communicating telepathically, but see, again, they don't believe it. As far as they're concerned, hey, there could be a conspiracy among all these little kids, and they could be maintaining this conspiracy for 30 years now. Again, that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. That as far as I'm concerned, the Ariel School incident is real, and it really happened. But these guys just can't accept it. Instead, and if anybody who's smart, right, like Mr. Taylor here, obviously a smart guy with that kind of background, with that pedigree. He wants to look into UFOs. Well, guess what? We don't like that you're doing that. So guess what? We're going to make a fool out of you, and we're going to write articles like this and throw you under the bus while we sit here in our armchairs eating popcorn. And one more thing about this, they're basically complaining that Taylor, was helping with the determine what these objects were for the Pentagon. Okay, so he helped with that, and so because he helped with it, because he wants to try to get to the bottom of the mystery, right? In their minds, the fact that he helped, that he was part of this, right? That it shouldn't even be. It's all nonsense now because this guy believes that there's stuff going on at Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, basically that's what they're trying to say, that all this stuff that the Pentagon's been showing everybody, it's all nonsense because obviously this guy's connected to it and you can't believe a word he says. So that's what they're basically doing. Pull the rug out from this whole effort that's been ongoing by different people. Obviously there's a small number of people in the Pentagon that want to get this out to the public, and obviously there's some people who don't. And then, trying to make this whole thing, this whole UAP thing that's been going on for the last few years, to try to make it look like it doesn't mean anything. It's all nonsense because look what they have working for them, right? So, but with that in mind, well, who do they want, right? Who do they want? I mean, they had a study of UFOs back in the 60s, right? The determination was that the real determination amongst the people that were part of that, right? And that was a government-funded study done by the University of Colorado, and it was headed by a guy named Edward Condon, right? And he eventually they came out with a report, but he determined out there's nothing to it. Because he didn't believe in it. He just didn't, even though there was stuff in that Condon report that had no explanation. Right, but that's where we're at. They don't want someone in there who's going to look at this with an open mind. They want someone in there like Condon who's going to look at it with a closed mind, like they have closed minds. Anyhow, it's very frustrating, but again, it was a total absolute hit piece, and it's people should just not even pay attention to it because it's complete absolute garbage and nonsense. This playbook has been played the same way years ago. Stanton Friedman was talking about this years ago. The late Stanton Friedman, the nuclear physicist, as we all know, who was a big, one of the most well-known UFO researchers in the world. He passed on in 2019, and but he wrote a lot about this topic, and he came up with a list of how these guys, these smart guys who are well educated, but at the same time are completely ignorant about UFOs and how they handle what they do with the people that are trying to research the subject. And basically he came up with a list, and here it is. The basic rules for the lack of attention to the relevant UFO data by well-educated but ignorant about UFOs professionals, especially SETI specialists, seems to be. Number 1, don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. This fits perfectly with the debunker of today. They don't want to hear about facts. They don't want to hear reports. They don't even want to look at the images. That scares them. They can't. I mean, you have some of them, like you have like the Mick Wests out there that will they'll look at images and just come up with. Sometimes he's right. I'll give him credit, right? Sometimes he might be right about some things. I mean, some things are obvious, right? So it's easy. But then sometimes he just comes up with completely bogus explanations that end up falling apart at some point down the road. Like he came up with something for the gimbal, and then it fell apart on him. But he's still fighting. He can't deal with it. Then there's just some people like Keith Kloor who just sit back in their armchairs and don't do anything. They don't even do any kind of investigation. They just any scientist that wants to look into this kind of stuff, they don't want to be bothered. Their mind's made up. Like Stanton Friedman said, number 1, don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. Number 2, what the public doesn't know, I won't tell them. Yeah, so these debunkers, they'll leave a lot of the details from different reports, UFO incidents, they'll leave them out of their stories and just focus on how they believe it's completely ridiculous. That's what these guys, they do that all the time. That's all part of the that's not a bug. That's a feature of how they operate. Number 3, if one can't attack the data, attack the people. It is much easier. That's what they're doing. That's what just happened in this article that I was just talking about, that Keith Kloor had written about Travis Taylor. Basically, if you can't attack the data, just attack the people. Throw them under the bus, make them look like fools. Put yourself up on a pedestal like you know what's going on when you actually have no proof whatsoever to back up your claims. So you have to try to make these people, what they do, they don't study this stuff at all, right? They don't look into UFOs or extraterrestrials. They just, and their minds are already made up, like number 1 says. So when you get to number 3, and if you can't attack the data, right, you attack the people. It's a lot easier. So basically, that's what in that recent article that Kloor had written about Taylor, he basically attacks the person because what else can he do? He really can't do it. He didn't do any research himself. He just doesn't believe in UFOs or extraterrestrial visitation or any of that stuff. So as far as he's concerned, well, what am I going to do? The only thing I can do is I'll attack this guy. That's it. I'll just I'll throw him under the bus. I'll make him look like an idiot. And along with it, I'll try to make that whole Pentagon report look ridiculous because Taylor was involved in it. And then finally, number 4, do one's research by proclamation. Investigation is too much trouble and nobody will know the difference anyway. Exactly. That's what these guys do. Investigation by proclamation. They sit back in their armchair and they just write stuff, and they act like they're really smart when really they. If people were to sit back and really think about what they're doing, they realize, no, these people are just lazy. These people are lazy. So, in addition to writing this article, Keith Kloor couldn't help himself. He actually had to throw a couple of, below the belt tweets, against Taylor, right? So somebody, one of his followers, wrote, another cracking piece by Keith Kloor. This is in regards to Keith Kloor's article, right, about Travis Taylor. Another cracking piece by Keith Kloor. You just can't make this stuff up, right? Because these guys, again, anybody who's following Keith Kloor, these people are living their whole lives in complete, absolute fear, right? Because or stupidity, I don't know. I mean, one or the other, right? They just have completely closed. Their minds are completely closed, and they're drinking the bathwater of these debunkers because that they need it. They need to keep drinking that bathwater because they need to be kept being told that, hey, there's nothing to it. It's nothing to it. All these people are nuts that say there's something to it, right? So Kloor writes back, Taylor is an expert in alien invasion too. Here's his 2011 message to aliens. So he puts a link on there to a YouTube video, and I'll leave the link to this YouTube video there, where Taylor was just throwing out a scenario like in the event that there's aliens listening about invading Earth, that they this is what they should do, right? But it was a semi-serious kind of thing. It didn't seem like he was completely serious on it, and it wasn't. It's nothing. So what? Because it's trying to attack the person. It's trying to make the person look like a fool because you don't believe it, and you just want to sit back and you just want to throw vegetables at the guy while he's on stage, while you sit back in your armchair and do absolutely nothing. Don't even bother to do any research whatsoever, because as far as you're concerned, you don't even have to do research about this. There's billions of stars out there, but hey, guess what? I know for a fact there's nothing out there. That's the mentality of these idiots, right? Smart in some sense that they know about existing science and they have no problem writing about what they know, but they don't want to take it to the next level and figure out some of these other mysteries that are obviously ongoing. And they've been ongoing for a long time. These people, if they would have done their research, I can't see how they possibly would be talking like this. It's just a sickening. These debunkers are just, it's like, again, at some point they're going to look like complete idiots. These are the same kind of people, like these people that do this kind of thing, right? That have to, they make themselves feel good by attacking these other people, throwing them under the bus. What they do, they're the same kind of people that, in the days of old and in medieval times where, if somebody would have said, hey, the world is round, these are the same kind of like high priests that were sitting around a table that determined, well, that's blasphemy, you must be a heretic, burn them alive. That's the same. And basically that's what they're doing today. This is the latest version of burning someone alive, right? So these are the same mentalities, but back in the day that would say, "Hey, the Earth is flat. You have no proof that it's round. Burn them alive." All right. So yeah, you can't take these people seriously. They're not serious people. Keith Kloor is not a serious person, especially when it comes to UFOs. I mean, there's no reason he's totally uneducated on the subject. He has not looked into it at all. He has no proof to back up any of his statements. Well, on the other side, there's a lot of evidence, right? There's a lot of evidence that exists from when they land it, right? There's all kinds of marks that these things leave in the ground, burnt vegetation, lifelessness of the dirt. Right, there's all kinds of evidence. There's people that have been abducted. There's all those claims. There's the 1994 Ariel school. Right, how are you going to say that was totally fake? That a bunch of little kids conspired to make up a fake, phony story, and they've maintained it for almost 30 years? Is that what you're going to try to tell the public? Come on, you're the joke, right? You're the one who should be getting thrown under the bus. Anyway, that's how these debunkers act. Rude, ignorant, stupid. Again, if you can't attack the data, attack the people, right? It's much easier. Just like Stanton said, that's exactly what's happened here in this hit piece in science.org about the Pentagon UFO study led by a researcher who believes in the supernatural, right? This is just a hit piece. It's complete. I would completely disregard this. This was written by somebody who has no idea what he's talking about, So he's not qualified at all to write about this because he's never really done any research. He's just making proclamations without reading a book about it, without going out in the field, without studying it at all. Just he doesn't believe it. So he's no reason to listen to him.